Gilbert Burns was doing an interview talking about his upcoming fight with Usman. And he said he talked to Kamaru about the fight. And he said Usman was cool. Usman said, let's fight. Let's leave it all in there. And then we'll go get a beer afterwards. Now, where that comes from, and I realize that isn't what fans want to hear, right? We want to hear there's some level of animosity generally. There's some kind of a conflict generally. In this case, this is competition, pure and simple. I have a goal, you have a goal, we're in the same weight class. By the way, it's the same goal. The fact that we're teammates and training partners and friends is all subsequent to the goal. Okay. The fact that both guys understood that, I appreciate. And I will tell you, that largely does come from their grappling backgrounds. You will show up to tournaments, you got to take on anybody in the bracket. Jiu-jitsu, the way Burns grew up, wrestling, the way Usman grew up. But a lot of times, that's your teammate. To put it in Usman's perspective, you could have a roommate who's the same weight class. You guys got to drive to the practice room together and have your wrestle off just for the varsity position against each other. Finish the workout together, shower up and ride home, and then go make dinner in the kitchen and work on homework together. I mean, it's just one of these things. As weird as that may sound for you guys, that's just the way that it was. All the way, you could back up from college, go right into high school. Some of your buddies are just on the team, and some of them are going to be in the same weight class. And that doesn't only carry over to wrestling. You guys go play football together, same position, your buddies, you sit around, you have lunch together, you practice everything, and then you go on the field and throw the ball around, and however that works, and the coach makes his decision. I'm just saying that is largely what it does come from, a competitive mindset. And a lot of times in the sport of fighting, the fighting aspect takes over to where, okay, I have to be mad at the guy. Well, this isn't a street fight where there's some kind of a conflict. It's a sport where it's a competition. I'll admit I'm putting a little spin job on this because I like some of that animosity too. One of my favorite things about mixed martial arts is if you have conflict and then you have conflict resolution. It's like the people's court. Both parties have decided to settle their dispute here and live with the result. I mean, there's a part of that that's very real, but that's just not where we are. So when you do look at the two right guys that are going out to compete, at each day that gets closer, this fight is looking better and better. I mean, this is like a fine wine in many ways. And even though it hasn't sit on the shelf for 20 years before it's coveted, as each day goes by, this fight gets more and more interesting, particularly as more and more details start to emerge. Now us, the audience, is getting revealed to us that this teammate business is a thing of the past. And even though it might only be 60 days in the past, Usman has left, gone to Colorado, and is training with Trevor Whitman. Well, that adds to the story. And even though Gilbert Burns might be all cool in the gang, okay, great. Go learn some new stuff. By the way, don't forget we're friends, so once you go learn it, make sure you come show it to me and bring it back. Maybe. But that doesn't mean that the coaches that are now still with Gilbert where he stayed feel the same way. They just lost a champion to a rival gym. They're not going to be overly thrilled about that, and they are in the corner of Usman, and they're not going to hedge their bets and go, well, we like you and we like you. No, excuse me, you left, you're here, we'd like that championship back, which means we got to put it around this guy's waist. That is very interesting. When a guy changes gyms, it's not always a great sign in the short term, because each gym has a different philosophy. And a lot of times you will go in humble and respectful of the coach and the new procedures and try to learn and envelop yourself in those new nuances. Okay, you'll try to do that. But a lot of times you'll forget what it was you showed up with. A lot of times when you don't work on something and you don't sharpen certain blades, you just forget them. I see it happen all the time in the short term. In the long term, I can see some real benefits to that. I am not willing to predict for you that that is going to happen to an athlete as deep and decorated and as mentally tough and intelligent as Usman. I'm not willing to predict that for you, but I am willing to predict for you that Usman has tendencies which he doesn't even know that his coaches do. And they are going to hand that to the guy they're working with, which is Gilbert Burns. And I think this fight is a lot closer than some of the odds makers do. I do not subscribe to the theory that Usman's getting a night off and that Burns doesn't belong in here. I'm not sure where that would come from. He has won 8 of his last 9. He has won all of his fights at this particular weight class. He came up the hard way and he just took out a world champion and future Hall of Famer. He also happens to be ranked number 1 in the world. So whether his name was the name you were talking about 2 months ago or not, I do not subscribe that this is not absolutely the right guy for this job. I think it's a hard fight. I can tell you in the sport at this level, you are playing in a game of inches. What you eat does not have all that big of a deal to do with your performance, but it does play a factor, which is why these athletes eat so well. It's why the Performance Institute has now got chefs every bit on staff as much as the trainers and coaches. You're splitting hairs, sure you are, but we're playing in a game of inches. Having a coach in your corner who trained the guy across from you is a very real thing. I mean, I couldn't imagine. If Clayton Hires went to the other guy's side, I couldn't even imagine. I'd be devastated. Emotionally, I'd be devastated, but I'd also know everything I know about fighting, I learned from him. And he might not have taught me everything he knows, but he did teach me everything that I know. Now, I'm projecting myself into this, but that's all I can do. I don't know what the relationship was. I don't know what the change of camp was, but I do know there's some drama there. I do know it's appropriate to bring this storyline to the audience, and I do know as this storyline unfolds, and I suspect we're going to get a little bit more into the weeds as the media starts to pick this thing apart, starts to ask them questions that they're going to be forced to answer. I do know that the drama and the suspense is going to build. I do really firmly believe when this fight goes off, and it's only a couple of weeks out, but by the time it goes off, anybody who ever thought, I don't know that I really want to see that fight, this is going to be a sought-after fight. This thing is going to do crazy numbers. Mark my words.